The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find. The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style.
Hello and welcome to the Big H Podcast for another episode of Moments with Mike. I'm going to start the podcast with my message, which is get your colorectal cancer screening. Now, a few things to pass along, some congratulations. First of all, to Andy Fowler for winning the mayoral race in the village of Hilton, and also to Jamie Atoma and Christine Brower for winning their trustee race. Also, congratulations go out to our Class B champion cheer team headed by Shelly Camino and Chris Monfiletto, who led his hockey team to the Section 5 championship. Congratulations to both those people. And for more further examples or other news and notes, I forward you to the HCSD website on the Hilton Central School District website. Well, today I want to bring to you my story, which leads to your job, and I'm imploring you to get your colorectal cancer screening. Now, under the age of 50, the leading cause of death amongst people of that age is due to colorectal cancer. And the primary reason is people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to get tested. It's not something that's a fun topic to talk about. And therefore, people put it off. And when you put it off, it delays the diagnosis, which delays the treatment, which leads to further problems in the future and problematic situations, possibly leading to death. My story is really quite simple, and I don't mean to drag it out too long, but I want to bring out what we did and my family did and my doctors did and what led me to where I am today. Back in 2019, I was 50 years old. My wife had, put together a nice 50th birthday party for me at school and all this nice celebration, but she kept at me and she said, you really should get your screening done. And I kept putting it off. And I said, well, I don't really have any symptoms. But then, I started losing weight at almost a rapid rate. I lost 30 pounds, but I didn't have any stomach aches or anything like that, or, blood in my stools. Don't mean to talk like that, but it needs to be said. But she said, let's do it. So I said, okay, and unfortunately I put a lot on my wife. And I said, you schedule it. Let's go do it. Let's get it done. Thinking, nothing to it. Nothing's going to come of it. Let's just another item to check off the list. So she scheduled it, the colonoscopy, which is still hard for me to say, but, it's reality when you turn into 45-ish and up. So we went to my colonoscopy, and, those of you that have done it know that the prep work isn't all that great. It's gotten a little bit better, and there's different ways that you can test yourself for this. There's blood tests, there's the box, but really the best method of testing for this type of cancer is through a colonoscopy. So we scheduled it. I'm going to say we a lot because a lot fell on my wife. And we scheduled the colonoscopy and did the prep work the night before, which again wasn't fun. And you're up late at night and, you're spending a lot of time, where. And so, we went to the place and, I guess I didn't do a lot of research on it. I just said, we're going to go. Everything's going to be fine. And it's not going to be a big deal. And so you go there, and if you want to do some research, but this is basically what happens. You go to the doctor, and they set you back to a place, and you have to have someone come with you because you're going to be groggy. You can't eat a lot. I think within like a day before or 3 hours before, you can't drink or have anything, and so you're kind of tired. And they bring you back to the waiting room, and they meaning the nurses in the place that you're having it done at, put you in a gown, put you on a gurney, and then also hook you up with an IV for some pain medication. And so it's kind of like almost an assembly line of what I remember. And so one gurney goes in, the doctor does their scope, wheels that person out, the next person goes in, and so on and so forth. So, by the time it came to me, I go in and I'm still pretty with it, lucid, I guess. And the doctor talks to me, the man doing in this case, it was a guy doing the scope. And I think I signed a paper maybe. I apologize if I'm not getting all the specifics right. And then, pretty soon you're kind of groggy and you go out, and the doctor does his scope. And I believe it takes 20 minutes or so. And, and then once they do the scope, then they wheeled me back out of the room into a waiting room, which you eventually wake up, and they come back and say, well, would you like to drink? And I said, my only really worry at the time was, do I want apple juice or do I want grape juice? And I took both. And as I was sitting there with my wife in the waiting chair and in the room, the doctor that did the scope came back. And again, we're just thinking, okay, everything's good. You can go after 15 minutes and you feel well, and you can eat, as soon as you leave. And the doctor came back, and instead of saying those things, he said, we found something. And at that point, everything changes, because you're like, okay, oh my goodness. Well, what did you find? And when you hear that, you're like, things change. I mean, people don't like to go to doctors for a reason. And when you get that news, you freak out. And, my wife, Carla, who's been my support system ever since I married her, broke down, and the doctor was like, no, we're going to be able to address this. We're going to be able to treat this and everything. But, when you get that news, you don't know how to react. So we were in shock, and they said, do you have a surgeon in mind? And we're like, surgeon in mind? No, because we weren't even thinking anything of surgical issues after the appointment. We're just thinking, let's hit McDonald's on the way home and, might go to bed and get rested up and carry on with our lives. And, so we walked out of the office and got in the car and didn't speak on the way home because, we're in a state of shock. We don't know where this is going to go from here. Probably a 15-minute drive home. We tried to absorb what we had heard, not really knowing the next step because we hadn't prepared for it. And by the time we got home, at that time, there's still answering machines, landlines. And the group that had done the colonoscopy had already listed a surgical team that we could call and set up a surgical appointment for to go see. So we did that. And this was on a Monday that I had my scope. And then the appointment was for a Thursday. And we had off that week, I believe, because it was break at the time for teachers. And me, I don't know how you would approach it. How I approach it is like, well, let's just go day by day by day. I didn't want to look out 6 months ahead, 3 months ahead, or anything like that. And my wife, Carla, on the other hand, she did a lot of research. She went into what the next appointment would be like, what they would find, what they would do, if there was surgery involvement, which there ended up being, and looking for support groups and things like that. And so this Monday, and then for Thursday, you had to do more prep work. And this time it was a little bit different than, drinking liquid. It was, the E word, rhymes with Benema. and did that, and then went to the doctor's, this time the surgeon, and wonderful surgeon, and um, still scared to death again, and went back to his, his room to do his work and his research, and went into the room and propped me up on a board and a 45-degree angle, and put another scope, where, and this time it hurt, and he was taking pictures. Brought back one of his colleagues of his, and the colleague introduced himself to me and shook my hand, and they conferred, and basically said, "Yeah, we see the same thing." And at that time, I believe my wife Carla was with me. I keep saying my wife Carla. My wife was with me. I say us, meaning the doctor. And he said, "Okay, I'm going to take you back to my office, and I'll be there in a few moments to talk with you." So we went back to his office, and I sat in front of his desk, and my wife was to my side, and he came in. He said, "Okay," he goes, "I've looked at it. I've got pictures. I've conferred with my colleague, and we've found that you have a cancerous growth in your rectum, and it's going to require surgery. And from what I see, there's 60% of your rectum that's affected. And what we want to do is remove 10% in front and 10% after. So it's a significant portion of that organ." And, still you're like, oh, what else could be? And he said, "Okay, so I want to treat it with radiation to shrink it, with also chemotherapy, and then surgery." I said, "Okay." He said, "After the surgery, we're going to test the lymph nodes. We might do biomarkers, and biomarkers are like, you see if you have the gene to pass on to, your offspring and things like that." And, we're still like, oh man, why? And you're going to have to wear an ostomy bag for 9 months within a resection. I'm like, oh my God, like an ostomy bag, like, and still looking at him like, really? Like, this is what you're going to do? I have trust in the medical profession. I had trust in this man. He had invented the surgery, I believe. And, he said, "This is what we're going to do." So I said, "All right, let's go for it." And so again, my wife and I headed home. I still was skittish on doing research. My wife did a lot of research on it. While we were at the surgeon's office, she asked what stage it was. I mean, stage 4 is real bad, and my situation was a stage 2. So it wasn't great, but it wasn't horrendous. So we're going full throttle. We're not going to mess around. We're going radiation. We're going chemo. We're going surgery, and then whatever follows that. So the doctor's office set us up with a doctor that would also monitor my radiation and my chemo. And I started doing radiation, and I forget how many days of radiation I did. But that was basically, for those of you that have had it, or if you hadn't, you drink some water, and then you go in, and it's a quick test. They mark on your body where they want the machine to go, and they zap you with that radiation, and then you leave. And it's pretty much like clockwork. You do it once, you just go right into the waiting room. They do their test, not the test, but the treatment, and then you walk out. And it was like a 30-day type of thing. And after that, during or after, shortly after that, they're going to work on some chemotherapy as well. So I recall, after I had some close friends at work, Lisa, Mara, who had experience in this, and God bless Lisa. And they made me a chain, 30 links long, and they put little sayings on there for each day. So every time I went in and had the radiation done, I could take a chain link off, and just, it was a visible thing that I could see, okay, there's another one off. There's another one off. And eventually I got here, here, and here. And I would get to that 30th day, and then we'd take it from there. Chemotherapy was another thing. I could take pills, which I did. Like it was, the details are a little skettish because they're 7 years ago, 6 years ago, but I would take the radiation and the chemo would be, like 3 weeks with, pills. And I'd be working through the U of R with that. And I'd be in contact on the phone with them if I had any symptoms or reactions like nausea, losing my hair, fatigue, and things like that. And my body was actually able to tolerate that okay. Um, and then the chemotherapy, where I also had a port installed, where those of you that have had it and have seen it done, um, you get something put right in your body that goes right into your heart. And then every now and then you go in and you go into this place and they hook you up to a machine and it basically puts poison in your system to go at the tumor. Um, I had people that offered to take me, not just my wife, but my brother Dave, my friend Donna, other people like, hey, if you need someone to go along with you, we'll go with you. And I didn't want to take some of them away from their work. So I had my friend Donna go with me. And, when you go to chemo, it's kind of boring because you're sitting there for a good hour and a half, 2, 3 hours, and you're hooked up to a machine and it's injecting you with this fluid. And you can have all the Fritos and chips that you want. But you can't drink really like Coke and stuff because the Coke, you'll get like this tingling feeling in your fingers. And it's really weird, odd feeling. But you can have tea and things like that. So I met this nurse by the name of Lori, and she was great. I don't know where she is now, but we used to talk about Game of Thrones. I tried to watch Game of Thrones so I could talk to her about it, so we could have some way to pass the time and just try to get through that period. So with the radiation and the chemo leading up to the surgery, the radiation worked well. As I went back to my surgeon, he said, it did shrink the growth. I feel better going in now and removing what's there, and as did the chemo. And as I said before, my chemo, my body tolerated it. I had a friend that came over, great guy, Zach, and he's like, "Hey, you might lose your hair." I'm like, "Oh, if you can tell, I don't have a lot of follicles as it is." But my body tolerated it, and I know some other people aren't as lucky in that respect and end up losing hair and maybe wearing a wig and things like that. So I considered myself lucky. And throughout, when the news got out that Mike Heiss, this third grade teacher from Village, has rectal cancer, and I say it like that because you don't want to say it too loud from the rafters, people came out and wished me the best of luck. They said, "You got this." They sent cards. If I were to dedicate this episode, it would be to Margaret. And she had the same cancer. And I never talked to her about it because she had retired a couple of years before I got my diagnosis. And all she said was her prognosis was not good. And she wanted me to have a better outcoming outlook than she did. And she didn't. And I said, if she can battle that the way she did, then I can too. So when you get the diagnosis, there's all sorts of ways to handle it. Second opinion. Well, basically, we already had a second opinion with that one doctor. Revealing it to family members. Okay, so my immediate family were my son and daughter, who were in 8th grade. My son and my daughter was in 6th grade. So I said, let's wait, and when we're sure, we'll let them know. So we sat the two of them down and we said, okay, this is what's happening. This is what we're going to do. And we prayed about it. And I'm a believer. And for those of you that are believers, you need to pray about it. And you need to be a witness to your children and your wife. And we prayed about it and said, Dad's going to be okay. It may not be the way we totally want it, but he's going to be okay. And at the time, I didn't know what okay was going to be. And I knew that you need to be strong for your family, especially, your most immediate, which is your spouse, because she was being strong for me. But I knew internally she was struggling. And my children were so young. It's like 50 years old, like what? And as we moved on with time, I realized that for those of you that everybody knows somebody struggling with cancer, whether it's you, somebody in your family, a friend, and they're always like, what do I do? And the thing is, best thing you can do really is just be there as a listener and be like, close that door of your office or close that door of your classroom and say, hey, I'm here to listen. You want to cry, you cry. You want to yell and scream, you yell and scream because you have a right. And it's the time that people invest in not only the person that's sick, but I think the people that are around that need that support. Okay. People came out of the woodwork with support, um, people that, I don't know that I affected as much as they affected me after my diagnosis came through. A friend Andy, a colleague of mine, came and visited me, and we went through all the medical stuff. And he said, "You know what? We're not just gonna sit here and sulk. We're gonna bust chops," and we did. Friend Jim came over, same thing, right? And it was such a breath of fresh air. And I'm like, man, that's all you need. People coming around to spend some time with you. You can air out your grievances. My minister came by. He says, "What do you need from the church?" And I was floored. He said, "We can have people bring meals. We can have people do this." And I said, you give prayers. And I know every service there afterwards, there were prayers said. We received cards from the Adela Society and the elders and things like that, which mean the world. You have God, and again, if you're a believer or if you're not, you need people to support you. And so those people helped out in my family, my brothers. You need to learn how to communicate this out to family. So after you communicate to your own close family, your immediate, your son and your daughter and your wife, of course, who already knows, trying to let your brothers know. My sister at the time, she struggles too with MS, and so she cognitively wouldn't get it anyway, so we kind of kept it from her. My brothers were floored, like they have children and they have families of their own, so it's like I don't want to drag them into it. They've got lives of their own, they've got families of their own. But here's the thing, I know they care, and I know it's like we may not be close like we used to be when we were 13 or 14, but Mike, I don't know which one it was, but they said, "You've always been a pain in the butt." Well, God punished. Well, not God punished, but what comes around goes around, right? And I knew they were there in spirit, and I think seeing me maybe go through the struggle would have been really, really, really tough on them. And I think they needed to be strong for themselves so they could maintain their level of comfort and belief and strength for their family and their kids. So, after you had the chemotherapy and the radiation, then it comes time for surgery. And I had never had a major surgery. It was scheduled in October. So I worked a little bit that year, school year, and then set up for a long-term sub. And October 4th, I believe, was the surgery. Or maybe it was October 9th, and October 4th was my last day at school. And again, crap in a brick, basically. And so that day of the surgery, I think I had to get up at 4 o'clock in order to get to the hospital at Unity. And, you have to, I'll spare you the details, but to lather up, so you do the prep work for that system down there. And then, get ready for the surgical appointment. And I obviously already knew my surgeon because we had several appointments with him. And getting dropped off, okay? And it's, again, you're like, oh boy. In a couple of hours, I'm going to be out. And I knew the surgery was scheduled for 6 hours. And to me, that seems to be really long to be under. And so, I said goodbye to my wife, and they were going to communicate with her by phone. And so I think she went out in the car, or I don't even, in the waiting room, and she would get a call from the surgeon when things were done, and he would tell her how things went. So you go back in a gurney, and everyone's had anything done with surgery. You rolled out, the surgeon comes in, and hey, my surgeon was great, all business. Came back, I signed this, he signed that, took a drink of something, got hooked up to an IV, getting rolled back, and before I knew it, you're out, right? So the next time I wake up, you're up. Surgery's over. And I was like, ugh. And I'm in my hospital room in the ICU, and the nurses are all around, making sure you're okay. And they want to get you up real quickly. And at that point, your body's not working the same. There's a lot of things hooked up now that weren't hooked up before. There's a catheter, and then there's the ostomy bag. And for those who are not familiar with an ostomy bag, that's basically how you remove a lot of your waste. And it's hooked up to your body, and it's adhesive, and it's a plastic bag, and I'll spare you the details. So, they get you up, and you're walking around, the floor, and you're sore as hell. Your stomach is just really bad. It doesn't feel well. And, you have the catheter, removing your liquid waste, and you're hungry. And I got to see my wife and my mother-in-law, and then for a brief moment. And I was under 8 hours. So it took a little bit longer. But, hey, you got to do what you got to do. So when you're getting it out, you're getting it out. Just get it out and move on. So the next day, of course, my surgeon comes in to talk to me. And I don't know if it's that day or the day after. He says, we checked your lymph nodes, and it hadn't spread to the lymph nodes. Good news, right? But I still feel like, ugh, but it's like, hey, it's okay. You're still okay. And so he went up, the doctor would visit with you once a day, or send his assistant to come in. And again, I was supposed to be in the hospital 3 days. My wife would come in and visit with me daily, and she had gotten some good advice from my mother-in-law. It said, don't take days off of work while he's in the ICU, because I'm getting 24-hour care. Save your days off for once I'm out of the hospital and at home. So she would come in after work. So throughout the day, I was being seen by this nurse and that nurse, and anyone's been in the hospital, they're getting you up every 45 minutes to check your blood pressure, your whatever. And it's like, it's hard to sleep. Pain meds, they let you regulate, if you're in pain, they come in and say, what's on a scale 1 to 10, and they'll release the medication to you. So after about 3 days, I was really quite bloated, and something was wrong. And the doctor's like, we got to have a scan of your belly region too. So they took me down for a scan of that, and they couldn't figure out, like, why am I so bloated? But I wasn't prepared to go home. So I was wheeled back to my room, and still on the catheter and things like that. And not eating, ice chips basically. And the doctor ordered a tube to go through my nose down into my stomach to start removing the remnants or whatever was in my stomach, to see if they could shrink that bloating and get me prepared to go home. So the doctor came in, another doctor, right? And he goes to insert the tube down my throat, and it makes me vomit immediately. It's just awful. But we do what you got to do, right? And so he put it down on my tummy and he said, can't eat anything, minimal ice chips. You got your TV there, but you just feel awful. And at that time, I'm like, where's this going to go? So every morning, one of my surgeon's assistants would come in and she'd take a look at what came out of my stomach and she'd determine if I could eat that day. And for 5 straight days, I couldn't eat. And I'm like, every morning at 7 o'clock, I'm thinking, I look at her and I said, can I eat? And she said, nope. And I said, oh my God. And, that's when I think it was the worst time. And I'm thinking, God, what's going on now? I mean, like, I went through the surgery for you. I told my family about you, and I'm prepared for what goes on when I get home. But what is going on? And it's like, I think it's that line, I know the poem, like, when you're at your worst and you don't see footprints, but that's God bringing you along. And he was there doing it for me. He knew my path, but it's like I couldn't see it. And I'm like, oh gosh. But what he sent me was not only my wife coming in daily, and anyone that knows my wife, Carla, knows she's positivity plus, smiling, talking, joking. She feels for me, of course, and I could see her every day. And then one day, my father-in-law brought in my children, talked to them, which is great to see those two. It was wonderful. And then one other day, my friend Matt came in, and he brought me in, and I love to coach football, but I wasn't able to do it that fall, and he brought me in a picture, and my head coach at the time, now is Rich Lapani. He had gotten a little sticker for the whole program to put on the back of their helmets. It said MH, and I can't tell you what that meant, okay? Because I was still alive and kicking. But to have the fact like that was his way of having the program think of me just brought me to my knees. And when Matt came, he had his son playing football, and we talked for half an hour. Our kids had played baseball together. He was a breath of fresh air, okay? And not only Matt came through, a friend of mine named Zach came through. And he came through when I was really down in the dumps. And he's talking to me, and I'm like, oh, feeling sorry for myself because there's victimization going on here too. And he's bringing positive things up. And I'm like, Zach, can you just let me be miserable at this time? He wouldn't let me. He kept saying, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. You're going to get out. You're going to do this. Thank God for that. And then even like my friend Jeff Perzak came by. I know you're not supposed to use last names, but he's my boy. And he hates hospitals. And I know he felt uncomfortable. And he sat there. I said, Jeff, just you coming is all you need to do. You can go, you came, you spend time with me. Like, I know it's tough on you, but thank you for coming. And, last but not least, I remember Cindy and Kim came through, and they are personality plus. And they brought a couple gifts for me to use once I get out, big pillow. And at that time, I shouldn't go without mentioning this, just my sister-in-law, Jamie, had set up a meal train for my family once I got out. And, having your family fed when Carla doesn't have to worry about cooking. And you had 2 other mouths to feed that are 8th grade and 6th grade was huge. And I remember Kim saying, aren't you looking forward to all the food you can eat when you get out? And of course, at the time, I couldn't eat because I had this tube down my throat and my nose. And I was like, yeah. And then Cindy, who's just in a great way, she brings me this big pillow that's going to be of comfort when I get home. And so, like, those things sustain me throughout the hospital trip. And then my friend Beth, um, she knows who she is. Hilton was in the sectional game for football, and these kids, of course, I had coached in 8th grade, and I'm watching the game, and they're playing Aquinas, and Hilton wasn't even supposed to be in the game, and all of a sudden we're going back and forth. We're battling with this team. We're battling, and I was supposed to be the stat keeper, and I can see on the TV my friend Zach. He's keeping the stats, and I'm texting with Beth. I'm like, Beth, look at this, and she's like going back and forth. Can you believe this? Can you believe this? And we're going back and forth, and it was like, again, there was the attachment outside of the hospital that made me endure throughout my situation. And Hilton ended up succumbing. They didn't win, but those are things that I remember. And so eventually, I think my twin brother Pat came up, visited with me, and after the 10th day, I was able to go home. Thankfully, I went home, and I apologize if this podcast goes long. But you get home and you're thinking, oh, I could sit in my chair, I can sleep regularly, and the doctor had arranged for a visiting nurse to come once a day. Of course, then when I get home, my nights and days get messed up. I sleep all day and I'm awake all night, and people are bringing food by, which is great. My wife's able to work. She should take sparingly days off, and the nurses came by, they take your blood pressure, whatever, and it was okay. And then had an appointment with Marie, and she took out this plastic thingy in my stoma. I'm not going to describe what a stoma is, but it's something that is usually on the inside of you, but after surgery, it's on the outside of you, and that removes what's usually on the inside of you to the outside of your ostomy bag. And so we had that appointment. And again, then, you continue on with your recovery. And the doctor had written me out for 6 weeks from work. And after 6 weeks, I'm like, I got a lot of vacation days. You could go back to work on an ostomy bag, but I'm telling you, it's gross. And I said, talk to my wife. I said, can I use some vacation days? Just take off a bunch of more days. I said, sure. She said, yeah, that's a good idea. And then COVID hit. So then when COVID hit, the family came home, which was a blessing. So we could spend time together. I got into cooking after all the meals stopped, the meal train, and we were able to watch shows together, was able to cook for the family, feel productive, and, move on towards the end of 2020, where I got my resection. And that was kind of difficult too, because when they went to the resection, you have to get tested to make sure that resection is all together and there's not leakage. And it was during COVID, so I had to go into the appointment by myself. And those of you that know me know that my wife runs the roost, and there's a reason for it. So I had the resection, and I was okay then to now remove or be quote unquote normal when it comes from ingesting food to dislodging food. And so it was in 2020. The surgery was in October 2019. This is June-ish of 2020. And then COVID. And then it was like, okay, now what do you do in terms of teaching? And my principal had said, hey, you want to do remote education? And I said, sure, because when I talked to my surgeon, he's like, your system's going to be different now. Different foods, you're not going to be able to tolerate them the way you used to be. When you need to use the bathroom, you're going to need to use the bathroom almost immediately, which means certain foods, when you eat, you're going to have to use the bathroom right away. So you're going to have quick access to one. So my principal was able to get me into remote education, which means I'm looking at you like I am right now, and I would teach 15 kids a day through Zoom. And if I needed to take a break, I'd put the camera on pause, go take a break and then come back. So that I was able to help me get through that and get used to eating different foods and, um, seeing how the system's going to be for the rest of my life. The doctor had said 5 years is a crucial point. If you make it to 5 years, you're going to have routine colonoscopies and scans. That's a big marker. Okay, so I made it 2024. And he says, you make it to 10 years, you're smooth sailing, maybe, right? No idea. Because every day I live with that fear, right? But I also live every day knowing that I have another day. My good friend Ori once says, every day is a great day. And he's 100% right. He's 100% right. And it's words like that that sustain me, sustain my family. And I'll go through your colonoscopies now once a year. I'll go through your scans once a year. I'll do what I have to do. And I'll deal with what this disease has created to me. And I think of my friend Margaret, who's no longer around, but I still am. And I still have a lot to live for. And as my mother once said, and God rest her soul, and she went through a lot in her 75 years or whatever it was. It's not the situation, it's how you deal with it. And again, 100% right. Things are going to happen to you. It's how you respond to it, how you react to it. Okay. And I think that basically is my message for today. Face your fears, get tested at 45 for your colorectal, do what you got to do, and face whatever comes of it, because you want to be around for a very, very long time. And no matter what that test says, you deal with it and you go forward with the ramifications. I'm testament of it, people. And I appreciate you listening to this story, because if I forced one person who's 45 years of age to schedule a test, and the next month I've done my job. When I was talking to my wife about doing this podcast, she said, Mike, what's your purpose? That's my purpose. Okay? Telling my story to get someone else to do it. And I hope you take that message to heart, because then I've done my job. I appreciate you for listening. I appreciate you for watching this podcast. If you like what you saw, subscribe, turn off your notifications so you can catch any other one when everything comes available. You can catch these podcasts up on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, X, Facebook, whatever. Thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Good night.
The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find